Hello, everybody. I think we're rolling. Yes, this is Kevin Hogan, and welcome back to Art Smart. We're doing another one of my interviews for creative professionals. Let me get a little closer so you can see me better. The whole purpose of this series is to encourage you to get out of the cubicle or any of those kinds of things that kind of gets boring and you want to try something new and different. And I'm trying to find very creative and interesting people to introduce to you that show you that, yes, you can be successful in one of those creative fields. And I think Danielle is a great person to demonstrate that today. So this is Danielle Kaler, and she is an old friend of my wife's and hopefully a new friend for me, too. We're getting to know each other a little bit. She's like, I don't know about that. We'll see.
Well, I mean, technically I've known you a lot longer than I've actually known you. So
that's right. We knew each other when we were younger for a little bit there.
Yeah, just for a little bit there.
A little bit.
So we're getting to know each other again.
And that's cool. And let me just tell you a little bit about Danielle so that you know a little bit about her background. And please correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. But you studied web design and development at Baker College, right?
I got my certificate of web design at AACC.
Oh, okay.
The web development, my bachelor's in web development is from Baker.
And, okay, so that to be more specific.
Yeah.
But basically, both of them kind of come together though into the web design field.
Web development is more back end, but you're still going to have to do the front end. This is what it looks like.
Back end and front end. We're going to ask you a little bit more back and front end.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to get to that in a minute. But just some other things. You've been self-employed since 2012.
Yes.
Okay, which is another great selling point if you're trying to get out of the house and be more creative. This means that you don't necessarily have to go and work in the office.
Yes. And
you've been telling me that you create your own schedule.
Yes.
Which is really awesome.
Whenever I went to work, I just turned a little timer on. I time myself.
Really?
So I know how many. So I know how long I've worked because I get paid by the hour.
Right.
So I time how long I've worked and then I submit my hours.
That's awesome. That's definitely because I'm a social worker by day, and that's definitely not how life works for me. Not that I don't like my job, if anyone's watching. And one other thing I wanted to ask you about later is not that I'm a Facebook stalker, but I did see that you seem to enjoy some older movies on Facebook.
Yes.
So I was going to ask you a little bit about that.
I like old horror movies and sci-fi movies.
Cool. I'm an old movie fan too. Not so much the horror, but I like the sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, horror's okay too. But I was going to ask you about that too.
Yes.
So we're going to just jump in if that's okay?
Yeah.
So basically, question number one is why web design? What drew you to it?
Well, I mean, first I actually started out as a music major. I wanted to go into music education, but some of that kind of fell through, so I needed to find something else to study, and web design was something that I had done before. I had actually built my first website in 1996.
Really?
With HTML2 and no CSS. CSS did not exist yet, so...
Well, can you give everybody a brief understanding of what those things are if they're not sure what that means?
Okay, well, there are different versions of HTML. The one we're on right now is HTML5. HTML2 was still one of the ones where everything you saw was written in HTML, all the colors and all the structure, everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they split that apart with, in 1997, I believe it was,
mm-hmm.
where the actual content was in HTML, and then all of the in the structure it was in HTML, and the CSS was, everything's in a different box. How big is the box? What color is the box? Does the box have a border? What color is that border?
Okay.
So
more
of the,
simplistic.
Yeah, more of the design stuff was pushed over to CSS to make it a lot easier and more streamlined, because with CSS now you can have one document for the entire website,
right,
instead of having to, with each different section of the website, you have to write in the code every single time and have a lot of repeat code, which creates a very large document that takes longer to load and all this other stuff, and it's harder to go back in and change something because you're looking through all these lines too, cool. Instead of just, okay, well, I need to change the color of this border, CSS, where
you can do it like once instead of having to go
do
and do it
once,
20
and then
times.
it's done throughout the website,
right,
instead of having to go to each individual page and each individual section and changing that every time.
I was trying to play it cool there, like I knew what she was talking about. I had no idea what she was talking about. So I still use all the old-fashioned things, like I use computers sparingly, except for YouTube. So Good. I'm glad to hear. So basically, you kind of already had that kind of computer knowledge, so
little
it kind of
bit, yeah.
transferred easily for
Yeah,
you.
because my dad used to teach web design workshops in the mid-90s.
Makes
So
sense.
I
Okay.
used to go to his workshops and we'd do stuff like that. So it was something that I was somewhat familiar with.
Cool.
Obviously, they'd updated quite a bit when I got my web design certificate. They weren't quite at HTML5 yet. It was still considered experimental.
Right.
Now it's the standard. So I still had to update to first HTML 4.01 and then HTML5.
Okay.
So
And when he got into the field, was he happy to hear that you were interested in getting into it, or?
it was his idea.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
he's not actually a web designer. He works for the 4-H program as their he's the program leader for all their STEM stuff.
Cool.
So that kind of falls into his purview, but
Interesting, because I knew that you're in 4-H. I didn't know that he was still connected.
yeah,
Cool.
at the time that we met, he was a 4-H agent. Now he's working at the national office.
That's great.
So
Okay. My next question is, and I got my piece of paper here, which is my cheat sheet. Are there any particular skills that you think really lend themselves to being a web designer?
that's a hard one because it depends on what exactly you're doing, whether you're doing more of the coding stuff or whether you're actually, designing what the site looks like. Obviously you need to know how to play with the color and the images to get people to look where you need them to look or
Right.
where they want to look. Because
How hard is it to do both?
it depends on what you're doing. Because the site that I work on, it's kind of showcases kids' GIS projects. That's global information systems.
Okay.
It's on your GPS in your car, you have the map that shows up on the screen. They're
Right.
using a GIS software to show you the map.
Okay.
So when they're coming to the site that I work on, they're there to look specifically for either whether it's their kids or kids from their state, and they're looking for that.
Okay.
So, I have a picture there and I have that right there. It's not difficult to guide people where they need to go, but it depends on whether you're looking to guide them towards the ads or I don't have ads on my site.
Good.
So
In general, there's a lot of collaboration that it sounds like, unless you are somebody who's very kind of eclectic in what you do.
yeah, I mean, my job specifically, I'm completely by myself.
Mm-hmm.
But in a normal work environment, you'd be part of a team with the back-end developers, with the people doing the website, the graphic designers, all this other stuff.
All right, so we keep going back and front. So what is back end and front end?
Front end is basically what you see, and then the back end is everything that makes it all work.
Oh, okay.
So all of the hidden coding, whether it's, the website uses a database, all of the coding that goes into having the website talk to the database and talk to the server. So that's all the back end stuff, the stuff that you don't necessarily see.
What do you prefer doing, back end or front end?
Mostly what I'm doing now is front end. I don't talk to the server. I'm still learning the back end stuff because I'm still working on my bachelor's.
Okay,
So
cool. I was going to ask you about college. That's a great transition. So do you feel that college is preparing you for your job to make you better at it?
for the degree I'm in, yes, because with my design certificate, I only learned HTML and CSS, and which is needed for every website. But you also another basic one you need to know is JavaScript, and that did not teach me any of that. But then you have to talk about the backend stuff. You're talking about learning SQL and possibly Ruby. You have to learn Java and Python and all this other stuff. So
I'd ask you about that, but I have no idea what it is. But in
Just
general, you're learning more that you need to know.
other programming languages that I would need to do if I'm going to do more of the backend stuff.
Do you think that this is something that people really need to go back to school for in order to do?
No, not necessarily. If you can find a certificate program that will teach you all of that, then you can get by with a certificate. A bachelor's degree generally is not necessary.
Okay. When you're trying to sell yourself, do you think a bachelor's degree makes it easier for you to sell yourself to clients?
Well, I see there's kind of a debate about that because, obviously if you have a degree, they have to pay you more. So.
Okay. That's
but
cool.
but obviously they want somebody who knows what they want you to know.
Right.
So it's kind of like, well,
It's a dual-edged sword
yeah.
kind of thing. Okay. And so far you've gotten kind of enough where I think most people would probably be happy to work with you, it sounds like?
Yes. I'm having a little trouble with JavaScript, but
Okay.
I have a website that I work on. I'm in talks with another to build another one. So
Okay, interesting. And so I also wanted to ask you a little bit more about that with finding clients. So how do you like to market yourself, and are there ways that other people market themselves that you think are also a decent approach?
well, what I did, the first website that I worked on was actually a website that had already been abandoned. It had been abandoned for about 2 years, and it was owned by somebody that my father worked with.
Right.
So, he went to work and was
It's
like, I need somebody to work on my website. And it's like, well, maybe Danielle can do it. So I went in, looked at what the website looked like. I did, looked at what needed to be updated, because 2 years on the internet is an eternity.
Right.
So a lot of things needed to be updated. There was a lot of things that you just don't do anymore that were on there.
Things that lead to viruses and that kind of thing?
It can. In the case of this website, there was nothing to steal. There was no, you don't log into this website, you just look at it.
Okay.
So it was a little bit lower risk there.
Right.
It was just it made it harder to just go in and fix things. I actually ended up having to tear down the entire thing and rebuild it.
Sure.
Because of the way that it was structured.
Right.
So.
Is that fun, starting from the beginning?
Well, I tried to dig in and fix it first, which after a couple of hours it was like, I need to go back and just redo the entire thing. But it's something that I'm glad that I had to do, because I've had a lot of school projects where it's like, take this website that's in HTML4, turn it to HTML5, and it has to look exactly the same. So it's something that I've gotten pretty good at, because
so it's good practice.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very cool. And for marketing, though, I mean, is the word of mouth thing kind of a big deal in this field?
I mean, it can be. I'm kind of small time, because I am working by myself, for myself.
You've done it for 6 years, so that's pretty good success there.
Yeah. I mean, but it's one website, so it's the same website I've been working on the entire time. So it's not like.
Right.
But the other website is, 4-H again. I'm working with a outdoor skills club now. I'm one of their archery instructors, and the club leader wanted me to make a website for the club, but we haven't quite connected on that yet.
Remind me of the archer thing, and not for this interview, but later, because wife and I have been interested in maybe doing that. So,
yeah, I would need to ask, but
yeah, well, maybe we're giving her ammunition. Anyway, do you think there are any universal items that people really need on a website, or is it a really individualized thing per each client?
It really depends on what the website is for.
Okay.
Because for mine, you're just showcasing things, so you don't need a whole lot. There's other websites where, if you have a store, you have to have a database that has all of your, product, or your inventory rather, on there. And then, you have to build it in a way where you have your search bar and all this other stuff. So it really depends on what the website is for and what you're trying to accomplish with it.
Are there any things that you just see and cringe with people that design their own, or kind of go low end and aren't doing it well?
That's kind of ironic, because a lot of my web classes have started with, here's a website that showcases all of these terrible websites. So there's a lot of older websites that went really hard on the animated GIFs. Everything's moving and everything's really in your face, and people find that distracting. Automatically playing music, people don't tend to go for that. If you want music to play on your website, make sure it's paused first. Tell them that it's there, that they can play it, but don't have it automatically playing. Same with any videos and stuff like that in general.
Right.
At least give them the option about whether they want to do that. I've seen some websites where everything, all the body text, all the regular text is in bright different colors. It's in bold, and anything that overwhelms the person that's on your website, you generally don't want to do. They want to go in, find what they came there to find, and then get out.
It's interesting. So, you may not realize it, but you are doing graphic design. It's just you're just learning it in a different way because font and presentation is just as important as the visual.
Right. I just mean the actual art part of it is. So.
Right. And that takes a lot of skill in order for you to be able to do that on a regular basis. Because honestly, I've tried designing things and it didn't come out well. So luckily, Facebook makes things pretty easy for the most part. But maybe I need to call you at some point if things get a little bit bigger time. So we were talking about the universal things that people need on websites. There are a lot of things that you shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Are there any things that you really think, though, are just becoming like you have to have it in order to be successful on most popular websites?
Yeah, that's hard but I mean, for me, it really depends on what the site is for. Some things that you have to look out for, though, is that you don't want your page to take a really long time to load. We have a 5-second rule. If it takes more than 5 seconds, they're probably going to click off. They might not, but in general, 5 to 7 seconds of loading.
A lot of cookies and things like that can be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, and some sites aren't going to have that. Mine doesn't.
Right. So obviously yours.
But yeah, you don't want to be any more invasive than you have to be with the cookies and stuff like that. But you have to be very aware of who's going to see your website and any needs that they need to have. Your website kind of has to adapt to them to a point.
Well, the 5-second rule, that's great advice. So if you're designing something 5 seconds or less, I need to be fast with these videos too. So apparently I need to be getting in and just like, bam, information, 5 seconds. So I want to ask you about creativity. How creative does just the setting up of the basics of the website really get for you? Do you feel that you're able to kind of get some of your creative itch out?
A little bit, because I'm basically given free reign. I had as I said, the website was already up, and he said he didn't want it to change a whole lot. He just wanted to clean it up a little bit, so I had a color scheme already, and I had to kind of work with that and just simplify and clean everything up.
Right.
So I get a little bit, but not. I can't go too far because he still wants it to be simple. So.
Are there any color schemes that are just off the table if you're going to have a human being look at the site?
Well, I mean, you do have to worry about colors and color contrasts and stuff like that, because if you're working on a government site, you have to abide by the American Disabilities Act. I tend to do that anyway, just because they tell us in school you have to be 508 compliant. So there's things that you have to do with that. Your background and your text color have to be a certain amount of contrast between them, or else it fails. So I tend to do that because my sister doesn't see very well. So
And I've also heard that there's a lot of concern of different colors and things like that, especially if there's a lot of movement on the site, can actually cause seizures.
Yeah, you don't want to. Again, with the overwhelming, you don't want to have a lot of stuff.
So basic is, for the most part, usually good to start.
Yeah, I mean, if you do want to add some interest, make sure it's in patches. It's not the entire thing. So again, overwhelming. So you can have areas of interest, but make sure they're areas, not the entire thing. You don't want to overwhelm.
Very cool. What kinds of websites? I'm sorry. I gotta read my thing. What kind of visuals and features do you think a lot of amateurs oftentimes miss in a website?
Yes.
Or things that just scream amateur.
Well, again, the animated GIFs and the big bright colors and stuff like that. You don't see it quite as much now, but that a lot of older sites did that, and so somebody who maybe learned a little bit way back when, and they're trying to get back in and stuff like that. So it can be easy, but.
So when it comes to your field, how quickly are you pretty much out of the loop and a dinosaur?
It doesn't take long. I mean, because you know, your website has to be able to adapt to every new device that comes out, because people are looking at your website on their phone, on the tablets, on the computers. Your site literally has to stretch and move depending on what they're
So do you have to code all that?
Yes.
Okay. And which one is more popular? That's something I was wondering the other day. I'm glad you brought it up.
Well, I think, again, it depends on what
kind of site?
What kind of site it is, and it depends on whether that particular site has its own app, because that's a lot of that's something that a lot of bigger companies are moving to. They have their own app. They don't have the mobile site.
Yeah, because definitely if you have to go in and do a lot of clicking and it's not designed for it, you have to do a lot of spreading it out on your phone.
Well, that's why your site has to be very movable. So that's mostly done with CSS.
I want to ask you about coding. I mean, some people seem to find coding itself to be kind of a creative thing.
Yeah.
And I don't understand that at all. So I was wondering if you could explain to me how you can be creative with code.
Well, I mean, you use the code to get everything on there, but you're using your own naming conventions, and you're just. It's hard to explain.
To a novice, yes.
Well, it's just hard to explain in general, but like I said, you're using your own naming. You can name anything whatever you want.
Okay.
So you can have fun with that, and again, if you're using the code to create,
so you mean the foundation of what everything is going to be, you are creating from the beginning. So if you do something poorly in the beginning, it gets harder and harder to fix it later.
There's a term for that.
What is that?
Let me see, what was that called?
And as a artist that likes to draw or paint, that's called garbage.
Technical debt. That's what that is.
Technical debt.
Technical debt. Yes.
Debt. Interesting.
Because it's so hard to get. It snowballs, so you have to pay it back.
Right.
And if you don't jump on it right then
interesting. Okay.
It's technical.
So no technical debts.
Yes.
But you can be creative though if you make a really solid foundation later on, you can do more and more with your website.
Yeah. And there are different ways to code the same thing.
Right.
So there's that too.
Okay.
You can get the same result in multiple ways.
I apologize for my lack of knowledge in this subject, but I am learning a lot, so I appreciate that. So let me ask you this. Personal flexibility with your job. So in general, I know you have one major client that you're working with and things, but other people that you're in this field with, do they seem to have a lot of personal flexibility?
I mean, if they're working, I have a unique case where I'm completely by myself, so I don't have to work with anybody. I don't have to work around anybody's schedule.
Right.
And, the site owner doesn't really care what I do as long as I don't screw anything up. So, with other people, you're going to be dealing with, regular communication with the client. You're dealing with, anybody that you're working with. You have to make sure that, the person doing the images has all their stuff in and all this other stuff. So it's not quite as flexible when you're working with a group, obviously.
For you, obviously, though, you seem to have quite a bit of personal flexibility with your schedule.
Yes, I do.
Okay. And I'm guessing that's one of the major reasons why you're in the field, right?
Well, I mean, it's one of the reasons why I'm still there, why I haven't gone anywhere else.
And you're going to school, so I'm sure that gives you quite a bit of flexibility so that you can kind of take classes whenever you want.
Yeah, my classes are online too, so I can, fit everything into where I need them to be.
That's great. And for honesty's sake, is there, obviously with your employer, she does everything right, she doesn't, but have you heard of any other people that are in this field that have a hard time, that are working independently, being honest about when they're billing for things?
I mean, I don't really. I mean, most of the people in the field I talk to are my classmates, so they don't really talk about their jobs all that much.
Okay,
so
that's fair. Yeah, most people when they're at work, they're trying to talk about something else, or in school, they want to talk about another subject.
Well, we're talking about school.
Yeah.
So and not a lot of them are actually in the field. They're trying to get into it, so they're coming to me talking about clients and stuff like that. It's like, my client's pretty chill.
Cool. So finding a chill client then is something to learn about. Okay. All right. Good little bit of info there. Obviously, you don't have to do tons of art stuff with yours, but I was interested in what kind of arts are you interested in, and do you feel that it influences you at all?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I did music, and of course, I was in band with Heather and stuff like that. So
Heather's my wife, by the way.
yes,
Yeah.
and I still perform. So
Cool.
there's that, and I actually had a programming teacher. I think he was my first programming teacher that said that musicians tend to do better at coding. I think it might be with pattern recognition or something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of patterns in
yeah.
music. Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of music is your favorite?
Oh, that's hard. I mean, I'm one of those people where it's not the genre or the artist, it's the song specifically.
Okay.
So there's elements of music that I like that it kind of transcends different things. I mean, I don't like, and it depends on what kind of mood I'm in too. It's like I can't listen to classical music while I'm working.
Interesting.
Well, I was in orchestra.
So most people find that very calming.
I was in orchestra, so if I was to listen to classical music, I'd be running into stuff that I've performed
Okay.
and stuff that I had to study as a music major, and because you have to do stuff like ear training and stuff like that, you have to listen really hard to what.
So you're kind of performing in your head. Or
Yeah,
something.
so if I'm listening to classical music, I have to focus on the music, and so it's distracting.
So what do you listen to when you work?
Well, it's pretty common for coders to listen to, stuff like EDM and, heavier metal stuff.
Yeah.
Probably, it's, for me, I think it's the beat that kind of gets your energy up so you can keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't. When I draw on things, like I love classical music when I'm doing something that's very light and gentle.
Yeah.
But when it's something that is more fun, I usually try to do something like jazz or rock or something that's more upbeat. So definitely, it's about that kind of rhythmic flow.
Yeah.
And so I guess coding is very similar. You just have to get that rhythmic flow going with whatever it is.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So about the old movies. So what do you like about old movies? And I was going to ask you, do you think new movies kind of suck?
I don't really watch a lot of new movies.
Yeah.
So ones that I've seen, I don't. It's like, especially if it's comedy, I don't tend to like American comedy. I like more British comedy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the older movies is something I also do with my mother. My mother and I go and we'll watch movies from like anywhere from the early 20s up into like the 60s and stuff like that. We have a like 200 and some of the older movies because we have a collection of 50 movies each.
Oh, so you guys just watch them all, kind of thing?
Yeah,
that's
like,
cool.
Even silent films. We have silent film Nosferatu and The Hunchback of Notre Dame and Jekyll and Hyde, stuff like that. Like the early 20s.
I have all kinds of stuff. So
yeah.
Maybe because I've been trying to find someone to go to silent film stuff. So maybe that's one way that we can kind of catch up because nobody seems to like that anymore. And I love silent films.
Yeah.
I really do.
Well,
Charlie
they
Chaplin
take more attention than normal movies because obviously you don't necessarily know what's going on unless.
Right. If you look away and then
if you look
back,
away,
you miss something.
Yeah, you miss something.
Yeah.
So.
Definitely, it's much more intense. And when you're watching movies and things like that, is that a good distraction away from your work or to forget about it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't get to do it a lot because sister, but
yeah, I understand.
Yeah, so.
And what was it? Oh, and the last major question. I had another kind of side question I was going to maybe ask after that. But are there any words of advice for someone that is looking to get into this field of web design? Other than don't do it.
Well, I wouldn't say don't do it. If it's something that you like to do, you should do it.
Right.
But I don't know. Because it's one of those careers where, you don't necessarily have to go to school. You get, they have online classes that are free and stuff like that. So, not go to school because you don't necessarily have to, but...
Right. It did sound like earlier, though, that there are definite benefits to going to school.
There are, but those are mostly I get to learn everything that I need to know.
Sure.
So.
All right. Well,
and you know, with the school too, they might be able to help you find a job depending on what school it is, because that's what my school
that's
does.
a good way to look at it.
It's like I think it was, you know, for a lifetime thing where if you need to find a job, they'll help you find a job. So
cool.
That could be a benefit too, but you don't have to.
I think that's awesome. So, and people forget about that. Sometimes the schools do help you transition out. So it's not just spending the money for class. It is sometimes investing in the future.
Yeah.
So that's good advice. So the last question, I've been watching too much Inside the Actor Studio. You know how they ask, like, when you're up in heaven, what you want to hear God say? I'm going to do my own version of that.
Uh-huh.
So if you were Darth Vader and you could air choke just one person, who would that be?
I'm not a violent person, Kevin.
That's good for you, having, like, morals. And I would, like, choke, like, entire street blocks, but, I'm a bad person, so... All right, so you wouldn't choke anybody?
Not.
Good for you.
I'm
All
not
right.
a violent person.
Well, Danielle, thank you for joining me, and thank you for answering so honestly. Is it all right with you if I post this and maybe in the link let people kind of see anything that you're working on? Or
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, cool. And if you change your mind, then we'll just take this part out of the video. But anyway, thank you to Danielle and for everybody for joining us. If you have any questions or comments, make sure you put it in the comments section, and I'll be happy to communicate that with Danielle if there's anything specific. And obviously, I would like you to like the video and subscribe to the channel. The more subscribers we get, the more people get to actually see this on YouTube and maybe reach more people. So hopefully you're having a wonderful day. Thank you again. And make sure you continue to art smart. Bye-bye, everybody.